Hi everyone, welcome to AMC Movie Talk for movie fans. I'm your host, Brooke Chavez, and this is our daily show bringing you all the latest movie news with insight into what it all means. And joining me today, as always, is our amazing editor-in-chief, Mr. John Campia.
Hi, Brooke. How you doing? Greetings and salutations, everybody. Today's moment of truth is this. If winning were easy, losers would do it, which is why I wish winning were easy. But that's your moment of truth.
Nice. Thank you for that moment of wisdom there. Well, John, it looks like we may have our villain for the upcoming Guardians of the Galaxy, the Marvel film that will lead directly into the Avengers 2. The cast of the movie has been shaping up as the team already has Parks and Rec star Chris Pratt playing Star-Lord, Star Trek's Zoe Saldana playing Gamora, and former WWE superstar David Bautista playing Drax the Destroyer. Now, reports have emerged that former Pushing Daisies star Lee Pace is in final negotiations to play the villain of the film. So, John, what do you think of Pace as the bad guy in the Guardians?
I think this is an interesting choice, actually. Pace, Pace is a guy that we haven't seen a lot of since Pushing Daisies. Now, he's popped up in like The Hobbit, and he's popped up here and there. But I think he's a very interesting choice. Now, of course, the bigger issue here is, well, okay, if this dude is playing the villain, who's the villain? Now, we know Thanos, who appeared in the end credit scene of Avengers. We know he's going to be the main villain in Avengers 2. But I believe, as most people do, that he is going to make an appearance in Guardians of the Galaxy. And he's probably going to be the mastermind. Now, there is some speculation going on that Pace is going to play this character called the Controller, which, you know, could describe half the girls I dated in my life. But anyway, he's going to be playing the Controller. Now, I don't know a lot about the Controller. I only started reading Guardians of the Galaxy when they first announced that they were going to be doing the movie. And so I hopped on my comics app and I downloaded a bunch of issues and I read a whole ton of them, but I don't really remember the Controller. So I can't say how I think Pace would be as the Controller, but let me be specific here. There is no official word saying he is the Controller. He may be another character, but that's the speculation. And if that's the case, then what we're probably going to end up seeing is that Thanos is going to have a presence in the film, and he'll probably be like the puppet master, because I believe in the comics the Controller is like one of the minions of Thanos anyway. So if that's the way it works out, this could be really interesting. We got to remember that this is the film that is going to lead into Avengers 2. This is the last Marvel film before Avengers 2. So you know they're going to want to do a lot of setup for Avengers 2 with it. You know we're probably going to get a good dose of Thanos, even if he's not the main antagonist in the film. So I think this is interesting in giving us a little glimpse into which way we're going to be going.
And there's also word that it's still 2 months before the release of the upcoming Sandra Bullock, Melissa McCarthy comedy, The Heat. But reports claim that 20th Century Fox is so confident in the film that they've already hired screenwriter Katie Dippold to write a script for a sequel. Now, Dippold wrote the first film and is a series regular writer on the popular show Parks and Recreation. John, what do you think? Do you think this bodes well for The Heat?
I think it's always good when you see a studio show confidence in a film that they have, because a lot of times we've seen studios show no confidence in a film by giving it no marketing, changing their release date, doing lots of different things to it, just showing or not screening it for critics in advance, which is like the ultimate show that a studio has no confidence in their film. So it's always good when we see that they have confidence. Now, I was just recently at CinemaCon in Las Vegas, and they did screen The Heat there. Unfortunately, I was at another function while The Heat was screening, so I didn't get a chance to see it. The general feeling I got from people coming out was that they either really liked it or liked it, didn't love it, but it was all positive. Like, I didn't really hear anything negative coming out of The Heat, which is a very good sign. The fact that 20th Century Fox is already greenlighting a script to go ahead, that doesn't mean the film is greenlit, but if they've already started production on a script for the sequel, that says they like the film and that they believe is going to do well. However, lest we forget, there have been many films that have planned to be franchises. There have been many films that set up the end so that there could easily be a sequel, but the films either sucked or they bombed at the box office, which kind of pulled any chance of them actually being able to do that. One of the great examples of that is, of course, a film we've talked about a few times on here, that one based on the dragon novel Aragon. Like, they wanted to make all three. They wanted to make a trilogy out of that. They thought that was going to be a big cash maker for them. And, of course, the movie was both terrible and it didn't do well, and so it scrapped those plans. So the best laid plans of Mice and Men. Fox may want to do a sequel, but really ultimately it will depend on how the audience responds to it. Do they go out to it in droves, making box office, and do they like it? Fox seems to think they will. Mm-hmm. So that's always a good sign. Whether it works out or not is yet to be seen, but it's always good if the studio shows confidence.
I agree, and you can't really go wrong with Melissa McCarthy right now.
True.
Speaking of other developments, there are more developments on the Expendables 3 front. Recently, Sylvester Stallone reached out to actor-director Mel Gibson to direct the new film, which Gibson declined. However, it seems Stallone has found his man. Red Hill director Patrick Hughes has been tapped to direct the next installment of the Expendables franchise. And in a tweet put out by Stallone, the actor stated, "The Expendables 3 needed freshness, class, and much badass."
Much badass.
Much badass. John, what do you make of this?
I think it's always a neat thing when you hear about an established franchise bringing in fresh blood, whether it's fresh blood as an actor or fresh blood as a director. I mean, we all know that Stallone is in control of this film anyway, so the director will be there to take care of the details of the directing, but ultimately this is going to be Stallone calling the shots. We all know that, so I don't really think it really matters all that much who the director is. I do find it fascinating that he offered the job to Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson, lest we forget, I know he's basically a pariah right now, and his name's got a whole big giant stigma attached to it because of all the drama that's gone on in his life. But let's not forget, Mel Gibson is one hell of a director. He's an Academy Award caliber director. You know, when you're looking at films like Braveheart, and you know, some people, I don't know why, some people have mixed feelings about it. Apocalypto was a brilliantly directed film. And I can't help but wonder, I'm not basing this on anything. This is pure speculation on my part, okay? So take that with a grain of salt. This is pure speculation. But I can't help but wonder if the reason that Gibson turned a film like this down was specifically because of what I said earlier, that we all know that Stallone is in control of this thing anyway. So maybe a director of the caliber of Mel Gibson sits back and goes, well, why would I want to direct that film if I get there and I'm not even the guy in charge on set? What's the point? So maybe that's why a guy like him stepped down. Whereas on the other hand, someone like Patrick Hughes, who is not a well-known commodity, hasn't had a big film to direct yet. Maybe he goes, okay, maybe Stallone will be pulling the strings here, but this will give me something to showcase, something to show off my name. And because of that, I think it's a really interesting development.
Director Gus Van Sant, best known for directing films such as Good Will Hunting and Milk, is apparently so keen to take on the upcoming 50 Shades of Grey movie that he's apparently taken it upon himself to shoot a steamy sex scene displaying his vision for how such scenes would work and his version of the story. Van Sant enlisted the help of Magic Mike actor Alex Pettyfer to do the scene. Who the actress was in the test scene has not yet been revealed. No director or cast for 50 Shades of Grey has been announced yet. But John, what do you think of having Van Sant take this kind of initiative?
I think it's always interesting when an actor, or I remember there were some stories before about a particular actor whose name is eluding me right now, when they said that they were going to be doing a particular comic book movie, you know, made himself up in it was Jonah Hex. So made himself up in makeup, hired a makeup artist team to do him up as Jonah Hex and put it out online as if that was going to put pressure on studios. See, you should hire me as Jonah Hex, and they never did. But I do think it's interesting that a director is taking this type of initiative to not only say, I want to shoot a scene, but I'm going to go and get an actor that everybody knows, a guy like Alex Pettyfer, who very well could end up being, what's the dude's name in the book? Christian Grey. Could end up being that guy. So, I mean, you know, Pettyfer, having done Magic Mike, he was also in I Am Number 4, which was not really well received. He was also in that Beauty and the Beast kind of rip-off movie that I can't remember the exact name of it, but that was also not very well received. But obviously he was in Magic Mike, which gives him a lot of posh right now and a lot of push. So for a director the caliber of Gus Van Sant, to go out and get a guy like Alex Pettyfer and shoot a sex scene because he really wants this gig, I just think that says a lot. And you know what's really interesting? I find it fascinating that 50 Shades of Porn, 50 Shades of Grey,
too much.
Being run by Universal right now, that a director with the caliber of a Gus Van Sant is actually interested in directing this. I mean, I think a lot of people, we've been talking about 50 Shades of Grey. It's a trashy little thing. It's going to be a more adult version of a Twilight, because ultimately that's what 50 Shades of Grey was. It was Twilight fan fiction to start off with. You know, and it's going to be dirty. It's porn for girls and blah. Wait a minute. Gus Van Sant wants to direct this? He wants to direct it so bad he's already shooting test scenes that he wants to show to the studios? I mean, this causes me pause. Because now I'm sitting here wondering, have we been underestimating the allure of a film like 50 Shades of Grey? Because I've just been thinking, like a lot of people, that this was going to be a throwaway movie, just going to capitalize a little bit, make a little bit of money on the popularity of the books. But no serious A-list star is going to be in it, and no serious A-list director is going to do it. It'll be throwaway. Well, wait a minute. Gus Van Sant is asking to do it. Well, what other directors are going to ask to do it? What other directors would actually say yes if Universal approached them? And go beyond that. What caliber of star would actually now want to be in this film? Can you imagine? How would it open the floodgates of what actors and actresses would want to be in a 50 Shades of Grey because of the popularity if a director like a Gus Van Sant was doing it? They'd want to do it.
Oh, yeah.
People win Academy Awards when they're in movies by Gus Van Sant. So all of a sudden now, 50 Shades of Grey has gone from being a snicker, girl porn, haha, it's going to be a throw, to a, wait a minute, this could actually be a really serious player. And I think we're going to have to start paying a lot more attention to this thing. I've never read the books. I am told by people who read the books that it's a really terribly written set of books, but that they just dig the story. It's a guilty pleasure. They like it. But okay, but you know what? That's all it takes. That is all it takes to get an audience out. And if now you're going to add talent like a Gus Van Sant, if you're going to add big name acting talent to it, and you're going to do it steamy, I mean, you can't do a PG 50 Shades of Grey. There's no way. Then all of a sudden, folks, this may sound silly, and I never thought I said this. 50 Shades of Grey has become a serious film that we are going to actually have to keep our eyes on and see how this develops, which is kind of interesting.
I agree.
Well, listen, folks, we've come to that part of the show for Mailbag. Listen, if you've got a topic or a question that you would like us to address on the show, you can email us anytime at amcmovietalk@gmail.com. Just send in your questions. We pick out a few every day and address them on the show. Brooke's got a few of them pulled out. So, Brooke, what do we got?
Yes, I do. So our first question today is a video question about Storm and the upcoming X-Men movie. It was sent in by Derek Brownie. Let's take a look.
Hey guys, big fan of the show. But my question pertains to Halle Berry being brought back as Storm for X-Men Days of Futures Past. I just feel that with more of a plethora of actresses to choose from, it's time to find an actress more better fitted for the role. My choice being Zoe Saldana. I just feel that Storm would fit perfectly on her resume of characters. But what are your thoughts on Halle Berry being brought back as Storm? And if she were recast, who would you like to see play her?
Thanks a lot for the question, Derek. It's an interesting question because while I am with you that let's say they were making a Storm movie right now, which they're not. They're making another X-Men film, X-Men Days of Future Past. But let's say they're making another Storm movie. At that point, I'm with you. It's time to recast Storm. And Halle Berry's pregnant right now. So I got to imagine they're trying to shoot Halle Berry scenes as fast as they can right now before she starts showing too much. But I'm with you. It's recast her. I never thought she was a good fit. I thought she's a magnificent actress. And I thought she did a pretty good job playing Storm, but it wasn't the right fit for her. However, that being said, considering they're bringing all the original actors back. I mean, they've got Hugh Jackman still as Wolverine. They're bringing back, Patrick Stewart. They're bringing back Ian McKellen. They're bringing back Michael Fassbender. They're bringing in James McAvoy. They're bringing in, the original Rogue and the original Iceman and the original Colossus. And if you're bringing all of these originals back, and that's part of the what would you say, the cuteness of it is that we've got all the originals back, then it would feel kind of odd to all of a sudden say, oh, except for Halle Berry as Storm. That one we're going to switch out. Now, if it was 6 months from now, then they would have an excuse because Halle Berry is very, very pregnant at that point, and she can't fit into the tight leather Storm outfit. That's fine. But right now, without a legit excuse as to why not have Storm there or not have Halle Berry Storm, it would feel awkward and odd to have all these original people but not Halle Berry as Storm. Unless Halle Berry decided not to do it and everybody knew she decided not to do it for whatever reason, then you got to bring her back. And you got to put her in there because that's the way the rest of them. Now, if you're going to ask me, okay, who would I put in instead of Halle Berry if I was doing a Storm film right now? I don't love the idea of Zoe Saldana because Zoe Saldana right now is kind of like the Peter Jackson thing. Remember, after Lord of the Rings was done, it felt like whenever a question came up about who should direct this movie or this movie or this movie or this movie, everybody would always say, oh, Peter Jackson should direct that. Oh, Peter Jackson should direct that action movie. Oh, Peter Jackson should direct that comic book movie. Oh, Peter Jackson should direct that romantic comedy. Oh, like everything was Peter Jackson, Peter Jackson, Peter Jackson. And then, when The Dark Knight came out, everything was Christopher Nolan. Oh, Christopher Nolan should direct that. Christopher Nolan should direct that. He should direct that too. He should direct that too. Everything was Christopher Nolan. And I get kind of tired of hearing about it. And it kind of feels like whenever you're talking about a young black actress for a black role in Hollywood, it feels like Zoe Saldana is kind of who I love. I love Zoe Saldana. It kind of feels like she's become the default answer. Oh, it should be Zoe Saldana. Whenever it's a young black character, it just feels Zoe Saldana. But there's a lot more talent than just Zoe Saldana. There's a lot more directing talent than just Peter Jackson or Christopher Nolan. And me personally, I would love to see Kerry Washington playing Storm. And it's not, and honestly, I've thought that before, like long before Django Unchained. I've always thought about her. She was magnificent in Four Colored Girls, which was just, I thought, a stunning film. I know a lot of people didn't like it. I thought it was great. But also, she's got some experience playing in comic book movies. Remember, she was the hot blind chick in the Fantastic Four movies. She was the Thing's girlfriend. Obviously, that doesn't help. But I honestly think she would be a terrific Storm. So for me, Kerry Washington.
We have another question here. Linus Shill writes, "You're all awesome." Thank you, Linus. And when do you think the first pictures of the Rhino, Paul Giamatti, will appear in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, or will they try to keep it covered up until the film? What do you think, John?
I think it's important to remember something here. In the Sam Raimi Spider-Man 2, actor Dylan Baker played Dr. Connor. So we say he was there, he was without the arm, but that didn't mean he was going to be the Lizard. That didn't mean we were going to see him as the Lizard. Dr. Connor does become the Lizard, but just because Dylan Baker was there playing Dr. Connor doesn't mean he was going to be Lizard. And we never did see him as Lizard in 2 or 3. Maybe they had plans for showing him in a future Spider-Man film until Sam Raimi walked away and they ended that particular Spider-Man series. So it's important to remember that just because Paul Giamatti is going to be there, and he's playing Alexei, I always mispronounce his name, but he's playing Alexei Setsevich. I think that's his name. Just because he's playing Alexei doesn't necessarily mean he'll be Rhino. Just because he's the guy who becomes Rhino doesn't mean he's going to be Rhino in this film. Maybe they'll set him up for something further down the line, or maybe it's something they'll never explore. Or maybe he does pop up as Rhino. I don't know. But I have a feeling that we're not actually going to see Rhino in Spider-Man 2. I think we're just going to see him as Alexei, and they'll leave it at that.
All right, Cookie Monster writes, "Hey guys, love the show. There have been many rumors on the internet over the past 2 years talking about a possible 5th or 6th installment into the Scream franchise, one of his personal favorites. He says, do you guys think there's a possible future for this franchise, or do you believe it should just end where it is?"
I think this is a franchise you need to just let end. Look, if there's always a big fan demand for future installments of any franchise, I say give it to us. I mean, is there a need for it? No. But is there a desire for it? Do people want it? Then maybe go ahead and do it. But I have a feeling, my suspicion is, and I have to admit, full disclosure, I've never been a huge fan of the Scream franchise, so that's just me. So take what I'm going to say with a grain of salt. But I kind of feel like it has been petering out. That it feels like it's fading away instead of just going out on a high, like maybe with Scream 3 when the series was still kind of popular or whatever. Now, the last film, Scream 4, made about, I think, around $38 million domestically on a budget that was bigger than $38 million. And like I said, it just feels to me that it's just been petering out more and more and more and more. So I think at this point, there's not a huge, massive fan demand for it. When you're releasing it domestically, it's only making $35 to $40 million, then that's not a real big telltale sign that you should be making more of them. I think it's time to leave it alone. Hey, you know what? Maybe in 5, 6, or 7 years, maybe revisit it. Maybe there'll be a nostalgia factor associated with it, and you can take another run at it. But I'd say for now, I think the franchise is done. Leave it alone, let it lie, and leave it at that.
Stephanie Johnson writes, "Hey guys, I've been watching the show more than I've been studying for finals, and I love it." Nice. I just watched the Thor: The Dark World trailer and realized how much more I like Loki than Thor. Tom Hiddleston just does such a good job with the character that I'd much rather watch a full-length Loki movie than a Thor movie. Do you think they'd ever do a Loki spin-off movie?
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that because I remember I was at the press conference for the first Thor film, and the whole cast comes out. So you had Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston and Anthony Hopkins, and you know, the director of the film was there as well. Kenneth Branagh was there. It was amazing sitting in this room with about 50 other journalists, and half of them were women, and they were all losing their minds over Tom Hiddleston. Now, don't get me wrong. All of them would have gladly accepted a ride home from Chris Hemsworth as well. There was no mistaking that. But they were all going nuts over Tom Hiddleston. In many ways, Tom Hiddleston, we talked about him the other day on the show. Tom Hiddleston, in his own way, kind of stole the show in Avengers, kind of stole the show in Thor. He's so good. And a lot of people forget, the reason he played Loki is he actually went in to audition for the character of Thor. He was actually up for the main role as Thor, but Branagh liked him so much, they decided to keep him around and have him play Loki, and he has knocked it out of the park ever since. Now, as to the question about could we see a Loki standalone spin-off, that's, I mean, I don't know about that. First of all, we don't know what happens to Loki in Thor: The Dark World. I mean, we don't know if he dies. We don't know if he turns pure, unadulterated evil. We don't know if he turns good guy. We don't know what they're going to do. So let's put that aside for a second, the fact that we don't know what's going to happen to him. All other things being equal, should they do a Loki standalone film if Loki is still around and still kind of the same guy? I don't know. I don't know. I think just everybody's so used to seeing him as the second character. Everybody's so used to just seeing him as the little brother. Everybody's so used to seeing him as the second tier star in it, that they're all just used to seeing him as the villain. I mean, if you had a really, really kick-ass story and a really, really kick-ass plot for him that makes sense and fits into the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe, maybe, but I just have a feeling they wouldn't do it. And I just have a feeling there are other primary heroes they want to do before going back. I mean, for instance, they just got Daredevil's rights back. So I know they want to do Daredevil. We know they want to do Doctor Strange. We know they want to do a Black Panther. We know they'd like to get a Luke Cage. I mean, so there's so many other things I think they'd want to do before turning to one of their, you know, secondary characters like a Loki, as brilliant as he's been. So personally, for me, I just don't see it happening. Well, listen, folks, we have run out of time for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Listen, while I got you, before you do anything else, stop what you're doing, take a second, and click that subscribe button. Become a subscriber to our AMC Movie News YouTube channel. It'll keep you up to date on everything going on in the world of movie news and, of course, our daily AMC Movie Talk show. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/AMC Theaters. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/AMC Theaters. Listen, go on out and see a movie tonight. Everybody's talking about how good Oblivion is. Go on out and see it. Head on over to www.amctheaters.com for all your theater, showtime, and movie ticket information. If you want an audio-only version of the show, look in the description of this video and you'll find links to our iTunes and our Stitcher Radio so you can listen to us on your commute to work or on the treadmill at the gym or wherever you'd like to do it. And once again, click that subscribe button. I want to thank, as always, our lovely host today, Ms. Brooke Chavez.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you most of all to you guys. Listen, the most important part of the show is not what I have to say, because that's just stupid and irrelevant. The most important part of the show is what you have to say. Make sure you jump down into the comment section below and leave your thoughts on any or all the topics that we discussed here today. Thanks again for joining us. Until tomorrow, my name is John Campia for AMC Movie News. Bye-bye.